everybody. Hello and welcome to Paranormal Addicts Podcast Season 2. We are on episode 20. This season's kind of flying by, to be honest about it. I haven't actually made the announcement about my big news yet, so I guess that's how we'll start out the show. Thomas, we'll start out with the announcement that Paranormal Addicts will soon be part of the Scared Network. Will be streaming on there, so we'll still be doing Get Haunted. Our live broadcast will still be part of Get Haunted, but then we'll be streaming on the Scared Network. So that's exciting. Thank you. I tease, but I keep telling him, I was like, I don't know why you want to put this radio face on TV, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, we'll start like we always do. Just introduce yourself to everybody, and then we'll get rolling.
Yeah. So Thomas Patrick Gormley, known in the industry as the Archangel of the Paranormal. I work with an events group called the Shaman and the Showman. We have the biggest event of the summer coming up on July 12th and 13th called the Connecticut Paracon. And that's Paracon with two N's because it's Connecticut. As you could see, www.paracon.org to see all the guests that are coming. We're very excited. This year we have, in between the Saturday and Sunday, we have an event where you could get tickets to be able to investigate with the Godfather himself, John Zappis, but also added, I'm telling everybody tonight that along with John and myself, we'll have world-renowned psychic mediums and shamans, Letriana Brown, and also Stacia Wills, who is my partner in crime. We own the company called Wardruna, which is a healing society where we could help people from step one all the way to the end. If we're doing a home investigation, we notice that there might be some psychological issues. We're able to get them that type of help and just move them through the process. So it's a brand new type of way to look at the paranormal. It's putting the paranormal up on its head. But again, you'll get to meet all those people at Paracon. So you'll get to meet all the people from Wardruna. And of course, Letriana Brown, who runs the All Access Network TV, which I'm also part of, on the Serial Killers, Supernatural, and Murderers podcast. It's on every Monday at 8 p.m. We always have fun talking about serial killers with my background as a former criminal behaviorist from the state of Florida, breaking down the psychology of the person as they grew up and got into adulthood and why they might have done what they did. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, very quickly. Blow through my 40 years of doing the paranormal and, all the ups and downs and thousands of cases I've done. And I'm in teaching mode now, but I still do the hardest of home cases. So we really take our clients through and make sure we thoroughly help them.
I like that because, as you know, from I was talking last year, last season, that's kind of how we do it. We still do residential cases too, private cases, whatever you want to call them, and we do it the same way. After the investigation, we don't just say, "Hey, you're done." We're there to help them with whatever they need. And if we're not qualified, I help them find the right person to help them. So that's important because to me, that's what all this should be about. It should be about helping people. It shouldn't be about, like some people think, it should be about being famous or any of that stuff. It should be about helping each other. So, yeah.
Well, you're definitely right about that. So, I go back, and from day one, I learned to help the living and the dead. And simply put, that's all you need to do. One of my biggest things as a shaman is being able to go on both sides of the veil to communicate with the dead and to help them make that decision if they want to leave, to hear their story, to hear what kind of trauma they had, to give them that words to help them through that process and get them to see, there's a better part than still being around this moving planet rock that we live on. So
exactly. And like you said, it's important to realize that that's their choice. They have to understand. So it's, if they're here, they choose to be. It can be subconsciously. That can be like they can think the they can think there's a reason for this to be, but it's also their decision if they leave. If they cross over, whatever you want to use, that's their decision too. So yeah. I'm always excited about your guys' event. I'm going to make it one of these years. That's a long way from me, but we discussed that last year. You you guys told me you're going to come to my event one time once I move it out of October. So yeah. I'm actually having it in September this year, so I'm getting a little bit better.
Oh, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. I tell you, I book up really quickly because unfortunately I have a normal job too, and I put in my calendar for the year, right at the beginning of the year, and it's hard for me to add stuff. There's a lot of the same stuff every year, like Paracon coming up, which is also a true crime conference on top of it for the first time this year. We've been doing Paracon for 5 years. It's always been very successful and people really enjoy it. And the vendors are great. We always have great speakers that have something to say. And then usually right after that, last year we did for the first time was the Connecticut Witch Festival. The reason why we started that is more of a history thing. A couple of years ago, people don't realize is the people that were accused of witchcraft in Connecticut was 45 years before Salem. Connecticut had the first person accused of witchcraft in our new country, and they were exonerated 2 years ago. So last year we had the first festival to honor that history. Unfortunately, we had to call it a witch festival, but they weren't witches. But that's that's part of advertising, unfortunately. But we like to bring the people in, get them to know that history, that it was before Salem, and it's good to teach people that, and just to have a lot of fun with all the vendors and all the witchy stuff. And it's always fun, and that's always a good one. And then our biggest one of the year is the Salem Paranormal and Horror Fest. That'll be in November 15th and 16th. We're still putting that together for our guest list. So if anybody can make it up there that's watching right now that has something to say, in the paranormal world, let us know. Maybe we'll put you on our guest list. Vendors, all that stuff is available. And we do psychic fairs, of course. So we have some of the best psychics in the country. I like to go through and vet all of them and just get to talk to them and see, that they're all fantastic. And people are always pleased with that. And that's always a big event. And of course, we go on these paranormal ghost hunts, and we bring people, we teach them. We have a dinner. We'll bring them all these different venues, and every one we've done since I've joined Charles has always had a paranormal occurrence happen. So everybody gets to have that experience, whether you're brand new or whether you've been doing it for a while. So that's always exciting. And of course, we're going to have the one with The Godfather on Saturday night, July 12th. So that'll be at an old Elks Lodge in Waterbury. So we finally announced that too.
Well, we're actually having actual psychics at my event for the first time this year. We're having Michael Perry. Michael Perry, him and his wife, they're both psychics. They're going to actually Michael and Marty, they're actually going to be there. They're actually going to do a psychic workshop.
Oh, good. They've been on a few shows, and I'm very familiar with them. And I think, what is it, Marty? I think she does the spirit drawing and all that. So yeah, they're very good, and I'd love to have them at an event sometime in the future. So
they actually recently relocated to Kentucky. They were from California originally, and and that's how I kind of got in touch with them. And then
well, maybe they moved because they like bourbon and they had to be in Kentucky.
Hey, that's a good reason.
I love bourbon, so I'm having a hot toddy right now. So
I like bourbon myself. So This year we kind of changed the name at my event. We kind of went away from the Paracon because we did that because a lot of Paracons have become kind of like drama ridden now, there's so much drama. And apparently I didn't know this until I was speaking at an event myself, and I was speaking on ethics in the paranormal field. And somebody decided to tell me that there's some people that will remain nameless because I'm not giving them 50 minutes of fame. But there's some people who use Paracons as a swingers convention, and they just go there and hook up with people. So so this this year we're calling it a Paranormal Expo. Paranormal
There you
Expo.
go.
So
Is there going to be, well, if that type of stuff is going on, then does the expo have 3 X's in it?
It should. It should. Well, I guess it's no longer.
As far as I know, that doesn't happen at any of ours. Everybody's spread out in all these different hotels, and we provide like discount hotels at different pricing. So whatever anybody wants, we always encourage a lot of people to their groups, the people they know really well, to get an Airbnb or anything like that. It's cost effective. And that way you have the ability to pay it back at your free table for our vendor, or for our guests. And then the vendors have an opportunity, of course, to make it back too. Because, all the time we've been having the Paracon, it's relatively inexpensive to get a table for the weekend. We love our vendors. Without them, we wouldn't have the Paracon. So we really want to, drive that up for them. I know a lot of Paracons across the country have been a little bit lower in people coming in. But I just want everybody to know that's watching, forget about what you see. I mean, it's more worth the experience just to be amongst, fellow paranormal or true crime people at this next one coming up, just to talk about that stuff and just have a safe place to talk about it. Because most people can't be at their job and talk about all the ghosts that they look for and things like that. People think they're wacky. But this is an opportunity to be around like-minded people you've looked up to. So who else can you go and see the Godfather of Paranormal? And also at our main guest is Butch Patrick, who played Eddie Munster on the Munsters and all that. So where else can you go and have that happen? And there's potentially the ability to be able to have dinner with them just before ghost hunting with John Zaffis. So we're really excited about it. We do have the two of the best shamans and psychic mediums in the country that are going to be part of that ghost hunt. So you're going to get to experience so many different views of how, John investigates, over the last, 5+ decades, myself, 4 decades. Letriana Brown she's a doctor, so she's very well versed on a lot of this stuff. She had her show Repossessed, which is a great show that you could catch on Hulu. So, and Stacia Wills, if people want to look up, she's one of the first of the shamans. Her family has a long history. Her family is from the Carpathian Mountains. The original word shaman comes from, and she is one of the remaining Mulfors that are still around that were persecuted back in the day. And so her abilities are second to none. And same with Lee. Lee has such an indigenous background, and she's so in tune with nature and just the spirit world. And of course, John Zaffis, all those years of experience and knowledge. And for myself, being a shaman, and years of, that camaraderie that I've had with John, Lee, and Stacia, and just anybody that's going to come. You could still go on our website to get some reservations to do that. But most importantly, join us for the whole weekend. If you're there for the weekend, both days, because there'll be different speakers each day, so you'll have something new. So it won't be the same from Saturday to Sunday. So we want to make sure everybody buys tickets for the whole weekend.
Yeah, that's the important thing. I stress this a lot. Mm-hmm. Even when I went to Smoky Mountain Terror, which it's probably more horror than it is paranormal, but it still has the paranormal stuff. And even my event, which it's still a little event, but I stress all the time to people. I was like, when we have these Paracons, whatever, paranormal expos, whatever you want to call them, when we have these events, we have to have the public there because that's how the money comes in. But when it comes to like me and you and the other investigators, to us, it really is a conference. We're there to socialize, learn stuff from other people. It's about networking. Yeah. And I was actually surprised when I went to Smoky Mountain Terror 2 weeks ago, almost 3 weeks ago now. It was how many people actually we knew who I was and who the podcast was, and
Yeah.
So it's good to be amongst other people, like you said, a place where it's safe to talk about stuff.
Yeah.
So this year, we're still doing just one day at my event. Next year we're going to go to 2 days, but this year we're still just doing one day. So let's move away from events for a little bit and let's talk a little bit. Why don't you explain to, not me, because obviously I know, but to the people watching that might not know what a shaman is, let them know what a shaman is.
Yeah. Shaman, if you really go back, that really started, the word came, it was a Russian word from Siberia. A lot of people, when they hear shaman, they think of Indians and all that. Yes, there are Indians that are shamans, but they prefer to be called medicine men or healers. So it's a little different. There is a big boom there in Peru for a lot of the shamans. So there's all shamans all over the world. It's basically a knowledgeable person that heals in each village as we go through it. They have the ability to talk to the ancestors. They do have the ability to heal that ancestral trauma, those types of things, and recognize it in people and to heal them that way. Because as a healer, you need to know there's people talk about 7 chakras and things like that. But just as a shaman, to keep it simple, we all have our spiritual, our mental, and our physical. If any of those are off, you're off. And if you're having spiritual issues, you could have physical problems. You could have backaches all the time. When people stress out, they start getting physically ill. So it's our job to recognize where that is coming from. But if you break your leg, I can't really heal you because that's just a thing. But if you have pain because of a spiritual issue or a mental issue that I could hopefully heal you through or take you through the process I was talking about with my healing network with my partner Stacia Wills, and a lot of great people that do this with us, Kathy and Greg Fiketic. There's a lot of people in the industry that are helping us with this to heal other people and take them through a process of recognizing it and to heal those 3 things. And we have medical doctors, psychologists, hypnotherapists, EMDR people, dietitians, you name it. And we were able to move these people through this process to the point where what that need is and be able to take care of it. And again, it starts by getting an investigation, and we're going through that, and we determine that, sometimes people's mentality is so off that they create their own haunting, and we have to get to the bottom of it. So we really move through it that way. And people that need to be healed or just some energy healing, Kathy Fiketic runs up our healing department, and Greg is more of our skeptic to move through some things too, because we have to look at everything on a 360 view. A lot of people forget that when the demonic comes, people look at it at face value instead of looking at it 360. And that's usually how you should look at those types of things and how they've occurred. So.
Right. I've always been fascinated. I don't know if that's the right term. Interested, whatever, drawn to shamans, because my gift, I'm still learning to use my gift, but my gift, I really inherited it from my great grandmother, 2 greats. She was actually a Cherokee medicine woman, and so I've always had, ever since I can remember, ever since I was like this big, I've always been able to see and communicate with them. I've always been able to sense. I've always been able to sense other people's pain. Even I could even see what their pain was without them telling me. So I've always wondered if maybe I'm not like maybe an untrained, undeveloped shaman, or have some of that gift anyway, because I've always had the tendencies, characteristics.
There is a difference. People could practice shamanism. It's not a religion. It's just it's a spirituality. Right. Not an organized religion. You can learn aspects of it, of energy and And there's so many different kinds of gifts that you could have as being a shaman. A shaman is chosen.
Right.
Your spirit guides or the spirits that are around you choose you to the point where you go through your journey. And once you recognize, a lot of people deny it. And, sometimes bad things happen when you deny your gift.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you get the shaman sickness is what they call it. And once you come to fruition, my really answered my calling. I delayed it for many, many years, and I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. But I came to the point after my mom passed in 2012. I finally submitted to my abilities, because what my mom went through, I don't want other people to go through. I want to be a healer. I want to help people, and being a shaman has very much helped that. I do have faith in God too, so there's no really religion I practice. I do have spirituality, but there are other shamans that look at things differently. But really, it's just helping the living and the dead. And my
Exactly.
specialty as a shaman is I console the dead on top of the living. The difference is the living has a meat suit and the dead doesn't. So, you still have that conversation, whether you use ITC devices, spirit boxes, anything like that, or just the intuition or the feel as being an empath. I could feel the energy and know I have an audience and pick up on or see through the third eye. I've had things video like play off in my head to get the message, to help people and to know what their trauma was, and to take it in, recognize it, and feed it back to them so they could see it in a different light and not be stuck anymore. And then make the decision for themselves if, they want to pass, if they're accepting of knowing what that trauma is, and accept it and know that I don't have to hold on to it anymore.
I relate so much to that, Thomas. My mom even passed away in 2012,
Yeah,
and
same. Yeah.
so, and the thing is, I mean, because we've talked about this before. I grew up not only in the Bible Belt, but I probably grew up in the heart of the Bible Belt.
Yeah.
So my gifts a lot growing up. I was told that it was a tool of the devil, blah blah blah. So I didn't really start trying to use them. The first time I ever recognized my gift as a gift was I was at my grandfather was actually passing away, and so I was staying in the hospital, sleeping in the waiting room because I wouldn't leave. And this complete stranger walked up to me, this black lady. She walked up to me and she said, "You're gifted. I need your help."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay. So that was kind of like I was 16, and that was just a wow moment. And I still hid from it for a long time. It finally took me moving away from home before I really started learning and practicing. And and like you said, to me, I look at it as a gift from God, and God wants me to use it to help people. So that's, like you said, I don't necessarily practice an organized religion. I do consider myself a Christian, but it ain't like I go to a Baptist church or okay. It's about having a relationship with God. That's all. That's what it
Yeah,
is to me.
it is.
And so yeah,
That's your faith. That's your faith and all that. You have that faith, and it works through you. Being a shaman, what you see here, it's just a conduit. Things work through me to help the living and the dead. I never know what I'm going to say. Something comes to me, and then my spirit guides or anything that I call on works through me to help them. So I'll never have that ego when I'm in that working atmosphere like that to help. Um, as a shaman, you have to let that go to really be open to spirit. If you have it, you'll be so far away from spirit, you'll never be able to, um, do that mission,
right.
and work and help people. And a lot of people, you know, doing these events and things like that, I love everybody that comes to the events and all that. And, but my lifetime, I've met certain people, know that it's not going to end well, but there's purpose behind it. My spiritual part of me knows I have to go through it because it helps me in spirit. My human side gets hurt by it, but I know there's purpose, and that's our journey. If our journey was easy, then everybody would do it.
Exactly. And and like you said, yeah, a lot of times we, like you said, that we have to look at it from our human side and from our spiritual side. Because I've had people last year that I considered good friends of mine that had that like you said, it didn't end real. I'm not going to go into details about it because I moved on from it. Both sides of me have moved on from it, but it hurt for a while, and it worked. It hurt me so bad, I almost walked completely away from all of it.
Yeah.
Like
Well, you never
35
want to.
years old.
You never want to walk away from your mission. Um, that's the thing is when you know you're doing good, um, evil will attack you, and you have to recognize it and discern it and move forward. Um, you know, that's just the spiritual side, knowing that you have that mission. Yeah, again, the human side gets all upset about it, but again, as a shaman, that's where it meets in the middle. As a shaman, when you meet certain people, when they come into your life, they'll leave your life, but there's purpose behind it. So they have their time, and when the time is over, you keep moving on that journey. It's not being cold-hearted or anything like that. It's recognizing the lesson and being able to move forward and help others with their affliction or anything like that, or the healing that they need. And that's why, it's so important that nowadays that the direction I think the paranormal is going is what my partner Station and I are already on top of, the Wardruna Healing Society, and being able to take people through every aspect of what their affliction could be, whether it be the paranormal or the metaphysical or just anything on that nature, or just, again, the mental, the spiritual, and just your physical body and what it goes through. I think once we recognize what that is and use all three, a lot of paranormal issues will go away. I think it's a lot of the trauma. It's the family traumas over the years, generational trauma, whatever you want to go through. There's some generations, they all keep having paranormal issues. So, and it follows them. And I think it's those chains that create that. Your mind, we only use maybe 15% of our brain capacity. And so what does the other stuff do? What are we manifesting? Those are the questions that we ask scientifically. I never knock it, but I'm very spiritual. I don't use a lot of equipment. I just use equipment to verify my feelings and hopefully
Exactly.
also verify I might have an audience, especially an SLS camera. I like those. I know they're not always correct, but I like to know if I'm talking to a spirit, I'm not talking to its backside. I like to be talking to it in the forward end and have that conversation. Yeah.
I say the same thing. To me, and I have all the fancy equipment. We know that, but to me, the equipment is just to verify what I already know.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, what I find the equipment useful for is when I'm doing a residential investigation. It's a lot easier to go to the homeowner and be like, "This is what I captured,"
Yeah.
than it is to go to the homeowner and be like, "Well, this is how I communicate with them." But they don't see that. I mean, you know what I'm saying? They don't see us. They don't see
Yeah.
us
Well, they
being.
like to have, when you show them that footage, it verifies the things that have been happening to them, so they know they're not crazy. It is a way of healing the psychological side when they say, "Hey, somebody else saw what I saw," and it makes them feel better. The issue that I have with some stuff in this world, you do a residential investigation and people want to pop all that info up on YouTube or anything like that. Yeah, exactly. But the thing is I got people that bring me stuff all the time. Hey, what do you think of this? You know, I always look at it and I say, I'm never mean about it. Of course, I don't have a mean bone in my body, but I do say to them, I love the footage, the situation you're in. How did you help your client and how did you help spirit with this information? A lot of times they can't answer me, but I'm
Right.
hoping that they take that in. And, everybody, again, is on their own journey. I'll never knock the way somebody investigates, because crap, 40 years ago, I don't know what the hell I was doing. I was like 15 years old and didn't know what an empath was until I met Lorraine Warren. And, then after that, I learned, a little bit from them at times, but I had to go out on my own. I know they were building blocks, for this industry, but I'm not Ed or Lorraine Warren, but part of me is. And what I learned, you learn a little from everybody. You go on your journey, you become all your mentors, but you still have to show who you are. If you can't show who you are, how are you going to help anybody else? You got to have your own identity. You got to have your own understanding of our world, and paranormal is very hard because nobody's 100% right or wrong about it. It is the
It-
experience. Everybody looks
it's
at
a
it differently.
pseudoscience.
Exactly.
Pseudoscience.
But in the end, if I could help take the fear away from a client, or I could help a spirit make the decision to move on, that's gravy. That's simple. That's all it is. That's
Yeah,
worth every cent in the world right there.
it's the best to me. That's the best feeling. Uh, like you said two really important things there to me, at least. And it's my show, so I guess that's all that matters.
Good show, buddy. Good show.
Audience, that's the fact that if you're doing a residential, it's not about YouTube, it's not about Facebook Live, it's all that. None of that. You don't need it. It don't need to be on there. When you're doing a residential, it's about helping the client, helping the spirit.
Yep.
That's what it's about. And that's and you, like you said, unfortunately, we've had quite a few YouTubers lately that don't quite get that. So, but like you said, it's a journey. I'm never going to tell somebody that they're wrong, because, like you said, 40 years ago when I started, I sure didn't know what I was doing. Luckily, I did have a partner in crime, my best friend Tracy. We did it together. He's not with us anymore, unfortunately.
Sorry
He
to
still
hear that.
shows. He got in a car wreck the year after we graduated from high school. But the interesting thing is, and I don't care what anybody says, I know it's true, he still shows himself to me sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, and this is true, you can watch it on our video if you want to. For my birthday this year, me and my team, me and part of my team, we investigated the Monroe House.
Yep.
So we went there for my birthday, and the Monroe House is out in the middle of nowhere in Indiana. I mean, it's almost to Michigan. That's how far it is.
Yep.
So we get up there, and besides paranormal, mine and Tracy's other thing was fishing. And for some reason, we get to the Monroe House, get in, start setting up everything, and there is a fishing lure on the table.
Yeah. For
no reason. I mean, people can say what they want to, but I know that was put there for a reason. So, but anyway, so me and Tracy, we got in this together, and being down here from Paducah at that time, Paducah, Kentucky, my hometown, we didn't have a support system in this. We started checking out any book we could. I read all of Lorraine's books. We checked out like anything on parapsychology, ghosts, anything. We actually got called down to the principal's office because they thought, I don't know what they thought, but they're like, that we need to be worried about you. Like, so we actually, all of our friends were going to the little haunted attractions around here, and me and Tracy actually spent the night in an actual haunted house. When we were so that it was cool, but like you said, we were figuring out what we were doing. Do I really think I was helping anybody that time? I don't know, because I didn't know what I was doing, so how am I going to help anybody? But now I know I'm helping people. So
you're right on that. And as your viewers watch, I know a lot of people get into the paranormal. Residential cases aren't for beginners. You could really mess up a family. without the proper knowledge or without the proper interview or without the discernment to help. A lot of times, I say a majority of my cases aren't really anything paranormal. It's just people have so much going on, a family dynamic, that it creates that visual to them. Again, we don't know how the mind works. You can manifest your own haunting, of course. There are cases that I've looked at that people said was something, and you re-look at it. But again, I don't know 100%, but it does make sense. Sometimes people are going through so much trauma that the issue happens, but once you remove them from the house, nothing ever happens in that house again. You know, places like Amityville, the people that moved in and had all those issues, they had stuff going on mentally, I think, and types of practice and what they manifested into it. Was it haunted at the time? Yes. It had a lot of bad things going on. And I know a lot of people, oh, that was never haunted. No, the people were haunted. The house just happened to take on that energy. So you can never say what is over something else. And a lot of people talk about haunted objects. Again, I have my cup here, my rabbit hole cup. I love this cup. If I pass away, when I put my cup down, my energy's still around it and all that. And if I wanted to, I could put my energy onto this cup and grab it, right? So it's the same thing with haunted objects. Your energy is always going to be around it, just like our loved ones. And that object could call on it, or somebody that's on that object thinks enough, they could put that into it. Case in point, my firm belief with the Annabelle doll is the darkness is around it, but not in Annabelle. And at any time that you taunt and all that, and you put that intention into it, yes, it's a conduit. It's going to do something to you, just like Robert the doll. So that's what I believe. Do you have to believe what I believe? No. Again, you're never 100% right or wrong, but that's how I perceive how those types of things work. It's like, why would you want to live in an object? But again, we look at famous paintings. We like to sit there and look at them, but we're not the painting. We're just admiring it for a lifetime. So that energy is always around it, and at any time could take on that object.
So that's a good point. Haunted objects have became a trigger issue in the field lately for whatever reason. Even like 4 stories. The one from Chicago was saying that Annabelle was missing. Annabelle was never missing. Dan Riviera is one of my good friends. Annabelle was never even in Chicago. So the point is, I mean, you made the point, but I'm just going to elaborate it a little bit. So a doll, anything may not actually be haunted, but it's energy. So by theory, this is our theory, like you said earlier. Spirits are energy. So some of our energy automatically transfers over to whatever. Most common, a doll. A kid in the door. That's so. At what point does that energy actually take on a life of its own?
Yeah. When in the situation where, again, you as a family that are having affliction, you put enough energy into it, like young girls going through their changes is what we figured that poltergeist activity. We don't know how our brain works. Some of these people, they go through so much trauma and angst. They put that energy out there. But even with objects again are conduits, just like us, like you talked about earlier, doing the Estes method. And all these things came into you because you're a conduit. They're coming into you to channel you to get their story out. Who's to say that a certain object with enough memory and, my favorite cup could do the same thing. It could draw in that channeling and, become that thing that people fear that goes bump in the middle of the night, But I really don't think anything could directly be haunted forever. I just think it could be called on as a conduit at any time.
So let's talk about my most interesting run-in with a haunted doll.
Mm-hmm.
Let me first start out by saying nobody, for whatever reason, everybody on my team besides me refuses to communicate with dolls. But to me, it's just another way of helping somebody. It's just another communication. So we investigated this haunted bed and breakfast. We've actually been there a few times now. Matter of fact, if you ever come down to my event, that I'll have you guys stay there. That will be where you stay instead of a hotel. So anyway, this place is already active. I prefer to use the word active than haunted. So this place is already active. Come to find out, the energy is from a abusive dad and his son. The both spirits are still there. Yeah. So, this other team, who I'm not going to mention because I've lost a lot of respect for them for a couple of reasons, but this other team decided to this bed and breakfast is in southeast Missouri. Okay, so like Cape Girardeau area. I'm not going to say exactly where because I'm just not going to. Right?
Yeah.
So it's in that area, and so for whatever reason, this other team decided to drive all the way to New York State and get a haunted doll and bring back to this location that's already haunted.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a good idea. But I had some interesting interaction with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, my team, they refused to communicate with it. So the doll is in a rocking chair in like the little hallway room, like where you walk between the kitchen and the living room and older houses, and that little nook, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so that's where the door is sitting. So the rest of my team decides to go into the living room and do their investigation there while I'm talking to the door.
Yeah.
So I have my Apple box,
mm-hmm.
my REM pod, my voice recorder, my video recorder going, and then my personal favorite ITC is I use a VM5, a Paratech VM5. Yeah, that's what I use. I've had a lot better results from that than any other one. So that's what I use. So anyway, so the thing about the Apple box, for whatever reason, it's kind of nobody really uses them anymore because it's really a one-trick pony. It's basically just designed to pick up footsteps. That's its only purpose. Well, I've only ever heard that thing go off 2 times in the whole time I've used it. So anyway, we were investigating.
That's a good piece of equipment then. The good piece of equipment then. You're not getting, when it doesn't go off like that often, then it's a little more profound. So
that's what I like about it because I know if it goes off, it's going to be something. Because I've even tried to drop it and it won't go off. So it has to actually be so I'm there talking to the door, and all of a sudden, I have the Apple phone by the chair, and I have the REM pod on the piano next to the So the rocking chair is here, and the piano's here. So I have so anyway, I'm talking to the door, and all of a sudden, both start to go off simultaneously. And if you've ever heard an Apple phone go off, they are loud. So they're going off, and then all of a sudden on the Paratech, I'm behind you.
Okay.
Well, for whatever reason, at that exact moment, my team member that was in the living room, she decides to take a picture.
Yeah.
She has no idea what my communication is. I have no idea what she's doing, but she decides to take a picture, and she showed it to me. When we did our little switch, when we rotate, and right when the spirit said, "I'm behind you," you see an apparition behind me.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a cool.
And again, like people that are out there, you're telling this story, the doll was in front of you, right?
Right.
And you're trying to put intention into talking to the doll, but yet behind you, the apparition came. It's like I'm telling you, at any time that apparition to get your attention to tell its story, if you're pinpointing in on the doll, it could use the doll as a conduit so it could get its story out. It's that energy that's around it. No matter what you do, you take a doll from anywhere else. It's the same when my partner Charles Rosenet and I, as the shaman and the showman do a ghost hunt, we have 2 different days and we have different people that come. Your energy that you put into that location could change how the spirits react. And that's why we do 2 days of it, because we want to see, we're doing these ghost events, but for us as paranormal investigators, we want to see how the atmosphere changes, what's going to change, what kind of energy does this person have as we set intention. But it's the same thing. A doll is just a trigger object, and the energy, like the kid that grew up with it, could still be around and saying, "Oh, there's my toy" or whatever, and you call on, that that person, that spirit. They could become that doll or whatever as a conduit to get their story out. They could be desperate at times. A lot of people got to realize that, if you're not in tune, and most spirits are going to come and try and get your attention. And if you don't give them that attention, that's where things get lost. Once they're able to tell their story, it heals them. They move on. It's not that they're trying to be evil or anything like that. I've had spirits scratch me, push me because they want to talk.
Right.
It's the same thing. They're desperate. You could be a lifeguard, and somebody's drowning. You go out there, and that person's so desperate that you're finally out there. They grab around you and almost drown the 2 of you together because they're so desperate to get out of that situation. It's the same thing in the spirit world. You have to recognize that, and they'll use anything that you're putting your intention into. So if you're pointing at that doll and you're putting in the intention, they might use that doll to get your attention. Is the doll haunted? No. It could be the spirit that takes it on to get your attention, to tell its story, wants you to listen.
Using it as a tool.
Exactly. It's a trigger object. It's just like the tools we use to try and get information from the spirit world, our ITC devices. The spirit goes into it and creates, in theory, the message to tell us.
So yeah, so I think you made a good point. Everybody wants to make everything into a demonic spirit or a malicious spirit, so they get more likes. But the thing is, especially, I make this point all the time. So if you're investigating a place like Waverly Hills or Pinehurst or someplace like that where the kids were mentally and physically, a lot of times when they grab you, they're just trying to get your attention. That's the only way they communicate. Some of those kids couldn't speak. Some of them couldn't see. So that's their way of getting your attention. That's all it is. So I think that's important to know. I didn't realize this till now that it's important because, we're friends and stuff. We didn't even start out with icebreaker questions. We just dove into the conversation.
That's what we do. It's all about us old farts sitting here talking about, the old days and things that we've learned that we're trying to pass on to others if they want to listen to us old farts. But that's all right. Again, like I said, you get into this, you're excited to get into it. I want people to make mistakes because I want them to learn for themselves. Me telling them all the time. It's the same thing when your kids are growing up. If I buy something for my kid, they'll probably ruin it. But if they have to earn it with their own money, they're probably going to take better care of it.
I think, like you said, I think it's actually a good thing that we just dove into it because our back and forth is so good, and we know each other. And I think the people watching are going to learn more from this than they would be asking you what your favorite location is. You know what I'm saying? So I personally have two possibly objects with attachment. Possible. One is they're both bricks, and I got them legitimately. I didn't steal them. I'm not disrespectful. We know that. So, but the other one is that's kind of personal to me. It was so here in Mayfield, where I live now, where my wife dragged me to. We had the big tornado 4 years ago that pretty much destroyed the hotel, and we had a hotel. It was called Hawes Hotel. It was actually the oldest building in Mayfield and the most haunted one that was known. And when the tornado came and it was beyond saving, so they demoed it. And I have a brick from it. Wow. And ever since I got the brick from it, I told people, I've told everybody that asked me, the brick seems like the feeling I get from the brick is somebody's lost without a home.
Yeah, it is.
So,
There's a lot of items out there. I have some really good friends, Danny and Lauren Perez, the Radicals. They collect what they call not haunted or possessed, or it's just troublesome objects. And they really study this stuff. Lauren's very good at psychometry and holding an item and picking up on that energy in the story. Again, these objects have stories that want to be told. And Danny and Lauren take these objects to keep telling the story for the spirit that's around it or to make its presence known. One of my favorite items that Danny and Lauren have that became our bond when we first met, just in the midst of COVID, and it's me being a serial killer type of guy and all that in my studies and all. They have a fork that was confiscated from the home of Jeffrey Dahmer when he was arrested. So who knows what that fork did? You know, did it take a piece of like my podcast? Our funny thing is we do hashtags. Our buddy Blaine that's on there is just a funny guy. He's another shaman. And there we're talking about Jeffrey Dahmer and had the Perez's on that episode. And Blaine goes out. Yeah, what does Dahmer do? He takes stuff out of the freezer one day and puts it on. He says, "Oh, today I'll have a leg of Joe." So it became hashtag leg of Joe, and it actually grew legs and became a big thing. So now every time we do an episode, somebody says something funny, it becomes a hashtag. It's just gained legs from that. Even just being with my friends and all that, we'll say something funny and hashtag it and all that. It's great. And that bond that we all have, not just those episodes, it's just talking to each other personally and sitting at the table and sharing ideas, which is not really done nowadays in the paranormal. So many people think they know everything and they don't want to sit with like-minded people and share and agree and disagree with stuff and still be friends and laugh and do all that stuff. And I'm just glad I have a tight circle like that, that we're able to do things with the serial killer supernatural murders, with Wardruna, and also with my partner Charles. Him and he's my brother, and I'll do anything for him as the shaman and the showman as we do all these events to bring like-minded people so they can sit at the table and have fun and exchange ideas and just have a good time and learn from each other.
That was actually one of my favorite episodes last year was when I had you guys on here. I don't think we actually I don't think we talked about much. I think we were too busy having fun, but it was fun.
I think we were laughing the whole time,
but yeah, you were talking about serial killers. I know this thing is, and I love I love the whole true crime, all that. So I was investigating the Urine Shrine 2-3 weeks ago when I was. That's one thing they do is they have a collection of objects that so they can have a safe place. They actually have a Ouija board that's from a serial killer from New York. I can't remember which one.
Was it Shawcross?
Yes.
Yeah, we're doing an episode about him on Monday. So yeah.
So I actually got to use his Ouija board.
Yeah. Wow. That's great.
I'll send you a picture.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah. So
if you send it early enough and it definitely is Shawcross, if you're permission, if I could show it on Monday's podcast, if I could get over to Gwen, our producer, to get it up on the air, that would be kind of cool with the supernatural side of our show. Yeah.
I will send it to you as soon as we get done talking. How's that?
Perfect. I appreciate that.
So I'm not a big Ouija board person. I'm not anti-Ouija board, but again, as you know, with my energy, that's a lot to take in. The first thing that was amazing to me, though, amazing might not be the first right word. The first thing that surprised me about it is it was just a regular Ouija board, just a Parker Brothers Ouija board, but it was kind of cool. I got a couple of good reads from it. One was Matt told me just to let it tell me what it wanted to tell me, and it said "Be aware." That's what it spelled out. Be aware. And then the other one was he was talking to a spirit, and he asked the spirit, where was he hiding? Or what was he attached to? He's like,
Yeah.
where are you attached? And it spelled out door, D-O-L-L. So that was kind of cool. And yeah, but they got all kinds of stuff there. They have a coconut that came from a hoodoo priest,
Yeah.
and apparently Chris Williams from Old South Pittsburgh Hospital. Apparently he touched the coconut and had like a month worth of bad luck. So there's like you said the hashtag and stuff. So they started hashtag don't touch the coconut. And now they got now they got shirts and everything. But really it's all about respect. That's what it's about.
Yeah,
You got to respect the living. You got to respect the dead, the property, the objects, everything. I tell people all the time, when we go to a location, really we're trespassing on them. They were there before we were, and
well, that's their territory. You're coming in on that territory. Again, it's the same thing. You enter a bar. If I told the whole bar, hey, I'll buy you drinks, they're going to love me. If I tell them who wants to fight, what do you think's going to happen? That's the mentality. That we got to treat people with respect. But anytime, I always get this question from a lot of people: if somebody was beginning into this industry, what would you tell them? I says, this whole industry and what we do in our investigations, and no matter how we look at it, it's always intention. Your intention you bring into it is what you're going to get out of it. So be careful of what you do and say and how you respect things, because it'll come back on you. There's a lot of people I've met over the years that have attachments because of their disrespect or anything like that to the spirit world. It's just like anything else now. There's people that hold grudges in our human world, and it's the same thing with spirit. They'll attach to you just to make your life miserable because you made their time in their place and you challenged, and that's what you get back. So, yep.
So yeah, and I'll even go a little bit add on to that. It's also like, even if you are a seasoned veteran or seasoned investigator and whatever, and like even with my team, the mood or energy that you go into and invest, like I don't allow anybody to go into an investigation with me if they're in a bad mood, a negative mood, anything like that, because it's going to affect the spirits.
Yeah, it is.
And I tell people, you also have to remember the spirits choose who they talk to.
Yeah.
We can go to the same location, and that I think either of us would have a problem. But I'm just for an example, we could both go to the same location back to back days, and the spirits might talk to me, and they might not talk to you, or they might talk to you and they might not talk to me. And that's usually because of what the energy that you're giving off. Like obviously with me and you, we know that more than likely they're going to talk to us because they know we're a tool and they can communicate with us. But you can't go in being like provoking and all that stuff. That provoking a spirit, you're going to get one of two reactions. You're going to get nothing, or you're going to get a reaction you don't want.
Exactly. Yeah, and that happens all the time. And like you're saying, you could go in one day, I could go in another, and you probably asked a whole bunch of questions. And then I go in the next day, and they're like, "Oh God, these same damn questions again." And so I'm just not going to say anything.
Right.
Or just like us, Hey, if I'm getting an interview, sometimes it's like, "Oh my God, this question again." You got to kind of hide it, and you try and answer it differently, possibly. But sometimes they're just like, "I'm just not answering this crap anymore."
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Because I mean that's how I investigate. I mean, I talk to the spirits just like I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
I mean, best example I got, maybe because it's my favorite investigation right now. Back to investigating the row house. So like I said, we went up there. That was for my birthday. My birthday is actually the 19th of January. We went up there on the 18th because that was a Saturday. So when it turned midnight, that actually became my birthday. So I decided to go down to the basement because that's where the malicious spirit, the demonic spirit, that's where it supposedly hides, whatever. So I decided I'm going
to. Just so you know, I don't want to interrupt you, but I always say this to people. It's like, everything's always down in the basement. Everything's always up in the attic, and the kids come out, Mom, something's under my bed. Mom, something's in my closet. So when you watch horror movies and all that, you as a
Right.
human, when you're afraid, what do? You hide under the bed, you hide in the closet. So some of these spirits that hide in those locations, they don't want to deal with us. They're trying to hide away from it. Yeah, their meat suit's gone, but they still have that consciousness. I firmly believe that they try and stay away. And a lot of people don't want to go in the basement. But as we're alive and we pass away, we're like, nobody really comes down here. I think I'll hang out here or up in the attic. So, and that's why a lot of times they're there. And you go down there and they're trying to hide, and they're like, oh God, these people again. And it's going to come off as an angry spirit. So, it's just life. It's just life. That's what it is. It's just afterlife too. So
It really was angry for me. For other
yeah.
people, I've heard stories. Like you said, I think you said it's about intent. And
Mhm.
I think since I was respectful the whole, we had already been there like 4 hours. Since I
Yeah.
was been respectful the whole time, I think maybe it already knew. So we actually had a really good conversation. Again,
Good.
I had all my equipment set up, and I now have an Apple box. My Go Scare. It's a
Mhm.
fancy yes no box. Uh,
Yep.
I have that now. So I was communicating with which that's a good piece of advice. But I tell people all the time, this is kind of a funny story. So the yes no device actually has a voice.
Yeah.
Instead of just blinking, it actually says yes or no. But it's Dave Schroeder's voice. So at
Dave,
two
what?
o'clock, it was Dave Schroeder. The
Oh,
investigator.
Schroeder. I thought you said Schrader. So
Yeah, it's Dave
I
Schroeder's
was like,
voice.
that'd be pretty
So
cool. I'd rather have Morgan Freeman's voice though, but that's another
so so
James Earl Jones coming through. That'd be cool.
that'd be cool.
Yeah.
So if you forget about it, and all of a sudden you hear Dave say yes at 3 o'clock in the morning, it's got because he's got that real deep voice.
Yeah.
You're so anyway. So we're down there, and I'm talking to the spirit, and I'm like, did you die or the property?
Hmm.
And it said yes. And I was like, okay, did you die in the house? Because at the Monroe house, that's important because they don't know if it's the property or the house. It could be
Yeah.
both. They don't know. So I was like, did you die in the house? It said yes. So I was like, okay, let's discuss how you died.
Yeah.
I was like, did you die by gun? Were you shot? And it said no. I was like, okay. I was like, okay, were you physically killed? Were you beaten? Were you shot? It said no. So at this point, this is my exact words. You go watch the video if you want to. I was like, okay. So I was like, I'm a little bit confused at this point. I was like, you said you was killed in the house.
Yeah.
Yes. But you wasn't physically killed or killed by gun. Yes. I was like,
Poison.
so can you tell me how you were killed? I asked it like that because I put the ball in his thing.
Yeah.
So in the paratech, I got fire. It said fire, just like that. And anybody that knows the history of the Monroe House, it's burnt down at least 5 times.
Yeah.
So it kind of goes. But I mean, that was kind of like that was a good moment because
Yeah.
nobody. It was
Well,
just me.
it matches the history. I'm one of those people. I don't believe in coincidence. Especially when it comes to evidence. If I could get evidence that directly matches the history without being prompted, that is very profound, and that says a lot
That's what I'm
about the
saying.
communication. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Because like you said, I didn't prompt it. I hadn't mentioned anything about fire, and
Hmm.
the strangest thing there has nothing to do with evidence, though. But they have like I guess what you call like a den between the two of the bedrooms, and
Yeah.
for some reason, it has a full pulpit. I'm not talking about like a little. I'm talking about like a full Baptist church pulpit.
Wow. That's
I'm
crazy.
like, so yeah, yeah. So so let me ask you a question. I don't ask for many people because it's kind of a maybe a controversial question, but
Mhm.
to me it's kind of like a moral question.
Yeah.
So when we go into these places, and we have to sign all the waivers and all that stuff, and a lot of the places now tell you that you're not supposed to help a spirit cross over.
Mhm.
So here's my question. I think you already know my question,
Yeah.
but here's my question. What do you do? Do you go ahead if a spirit asks you to help them? Do you help them, or do you invite to the raver?
I won't tell. I won't tell. Well, the problem is so many people in this industry know who I am and what I do. So a lot of these locations don't invite me. So
Right.
just to avoid the whole situation. But I'll tell you this, I won't name any names, but I was on an investigation, and the person that runs the location didn't know I was coming. It was a third party group that brought me in for a fundraiser or just, an event. And, and then they had all the guests like start speaking and all that. And then he realized, oh my God, I know who that guy is. He gets in my face and says, don't you dare pass any of my spirits along. So now that tells me one of two things. If somebody wants to leave as a spirit, just as a human being, if you were stuck in a house and it's like, oh, it's time to leave, and somebody stands in front of the door, isn't that going to piss you off? So, money or not, your location, any location, if I make a spirit leave, it could come back anytime it wants. You're just trying to level it up or whatever. It's the same thing with psychic mediums able to pick up on family members that already made the transition. When you understand the paranormal that way, you look at things differently. Even if I make one spirit pass, that location, the history, the energy that's in it, it's always going to have that haunted aspect to it. But to not let a spirit make that transition, you're just as guilty as the most evil person. You're keeping somebody from making that transition. You're holding them hostage. So, and my thing is as a shaman, and there's an agreement that I have with my spirit guides to help me make sure that if I'm dealing with a spirit, that I'm not just making any old spirit move on, which I can't do. They have their own free will still. But I ask them, tell them if they need help to call my name. And if anybody's ever been on an investigation with me, you'll hear through the ITC device, Tom, even spelled out on a pendulum, TOM, TOM. It happens all the time. But I know it's time to go to work and try to communicate and take in their message, their story, what they need. I've had times where somebody didn't know they were dead. I had to show them their death certificate that happened to be on file at this certain location to say, hey, here it is. The SLS camera's on, and I'm like, here it is. I know I was facing them. And they made the transition to leave because they finally realized, oh, there it is in black and white. I think I'll make that decision. But you have to understand, we don't understand how spirits move in and out. Am I just leveling them up? Are they making the transition to what people believe as heaven or anything like that? I don't know. I won't know, and none of us will know until we actually die.
Right.
A lot of people say,
Exactly.
hey, go to the light, go to the light. What is the light? From what I found scientifically is when your body separates, the soul separates and all that, there's this flash of light that people talk about. And when they make the transition from death to go back in and their near death experience, the light happens again, a flash, they're back in their body. That's the light. The light is that near death experience or that one moment in time. But for spirit, what I found with years and years of experience and trial and error in communicating with the spirits, when you're in trauma and it's holding you here, you need to take care of that trauma. How do you do that? When you're not feeling good, when that great song comes on that you loved from childhood and it makes you feel good, it brings you to that positive. That's what we need to find out with spirit. If that spirit loved daisies and that was their favorite thing, you want them to picture, they have still free will consciousness in theory. I want you to picture daisies. And when they do, they make the transition because you took them out of the trauma and realize that there's still, that good in you that you can make that transition. Even to the point where I had a couple friends of mine were channeling this woman and she couldn't find her children. And all I did was just sit there with her and said, I know you have the fear you can't find your children, but this is what I want you to do. I want you to picture the best moment you had with your kids, that best memory. And she did. And her kids appeared in front of her and they were able to transition together. So that's what it is. It's finding that moment of happiness, their most happy moment, to get rid of the trauma and being lost and not knowing how to make the next step. So it's kind of like a class that I teach for people that want to do that psycho pump or that type of transitional learning. For spirit has a shamanistic way, or any way you want to look at it. But again, people learn all this stuff. It's for their own journey. Not everybody helps people transition the same way I do, but it's the same thing. Not all of us write with a pencil the same way, but it all is pretty much the same thing. So there, we all
Right.
put our little thing on it that helps us help spirit or the living.
So I guess the craziest, I don't like using the word crazy, but the most unique, maybe better term, situation, case I ever encountered as far as like crossing people over was I was actually got a phone call from a friend of mine who is the chief deputy sheriff out here, and we had a we had a we have a road that's known to be haunted.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same story you hear everywhere. So since I'm not from here, I didn't know if it was a true story or not. But it's a story you hear it in every town. Two teenagers get in a car wreck, going to or from prom, blah blah blah. So that's the story. So again, me not being from here, I didn't know that in this case it was actually a true story. I've seen the police reports and everything. My wife was actually 2 grades ahead of the people. So I mean, so
you know, there's
case,
actual history. There's truth to it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know it was an urban legend. You know, it's kind of like a school. Every school you go to, there's always somebody that hung themselves in the bathroom. You know, come on, it can't happen. But anyway, so I knew it was true. So they call us. We call us out there, and I'm by myself this time because they just want me because of my gift. They don't want like a full investigation. They just want.
Yeah.
So
sometimes it's all it takes, you know.
Yeah. So I'm there, and I do have Jill with me, who's there to help me in case I get overwhelmed or whatever. Which I wonder why I still pick her, because one time the ghost pushed me down and she just watched me. So I don't know. But anyway.
Let him lay there.
She said she was in too much shock to help me. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, so anyway, I get in contact with the girl first, and I mean, it'd be Jessica.
Yeah.
So she found me first. Well, she told me straight out. She told me that she was still there because she didn't want to cross over without her boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I was like, I thought immediately this is going to get complicated. That was my first thought. And so we tried to locate him. Yep. His name was Ben. Ben was hiding.
Yeah.
I finally got in contact with Ben.
Yep.
And I told Ben, I told Ben, I was like, so Jessica is still here because she wants to cross over with you.
Yeah.
Ben told me, Ben's like, that's sweet, but I'm not crossing over because I'm going to hell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's like, so tell Jessica to cross over. He's like, but I'm not. So that wasn't the greatest ending to the thing, but it still answers.
A lot of spirits will think that, especially a young person like that might have went through their religion, Catholic Church, and some consciousness. You're so scared you think you're going to go to hell, but it's a trauma response. So if we could work through that trauma with Ben, and get him to see that, you make yourself right in your own mind of that trauma, or whether you perceive anything you've done wrong. It's like you have to tell him, make your confession, and then I could tell him, hey, you made your confession. You're probably not going to go to your perception of hell. I still think where we're living right now is hell, but that's besides the point. Going through the human experience is pretty much hellish. So. So
The interesting thing is, in a completely unrelated case,
yeah,
I was able to help him.
good.
He was actually, as we know, spirits can be wherever they want to be. Well,
Hmm.
his spirit was also at his parents' house,
Yep.
and I'm not going to go into much detail because it's a residential case and I don't do that.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
short story. But point is, we encountered him there again, and we was able to
Yeah.
counsel him,
Hmm.
whatever to him, and he went to wherever he wanted to go.
Yeah.
So
Well, there's
so
purpose
so
behind that. There's purpose behind that. Yes, he had the fear where he was going to go, but he did still want help. And that's why you ran into him those multiple times. So they're going to be around you and periodically poke in and realize, and this person's here to help me, and let me see what he could do to help me. So that happens. I've had that happen. I've had spirits that have become spirit guides for me because of the assistance, and they add on to your group, your tribe, your protectors, the ones that give you the information to help the next person that needs it, spirit or living. So
I always enjoy discussing this aspect with you so much. I'll probably go deeper with you than anybody else I talk to
yeah.
because I know you can relate to
Well,
my
I am the keeper of the rabbit hole, so I do tend to take people pretty deep. So
so there you go. So all right, let's get a couple of more questions in, and then
yeah,
I'll let
this is
I'll
great.
let you go because my kids when we go to the fair. So let's go. I'm going to ask you a couple questions. I ask everybody just because I want to get your perspective on it. The
Yep.
first one is, well, I don't really ask it this one to everybody, just some people. So the first one is, we've both been doing this for a long time. So to you, what is the difference between the field now and the field 30 or 40 years ago when we got started?
Yeah. There's a lot more people, of course, in the field. So there's a lot more opinion and all that, and there's a lot more theory. But again, like I said, back when I got in the field, there was a lot more education, sitting at the table, exchanging ideas. And now there's a lot more video, things put out there. There's a lot of chaos, I think, but there are people still working in this field, whether they be new or from the old days, that are really like doing the work. You can't just go out, make a video, and think you're famous. You got to do the work. You got to help the living and the dead. You got to do that. And but there's so many people. There's so many TV shows. People get the wrong idea of what they're seeing. There's nothing wrong. Especially the event Paracon. You come to that, you get to talk to all these people that have been doing it for a long time, or all their different aspects and opinions to help you make your own opinion for yourself and how you could help as an individual on your journey. But years ago, we don't have the equipment back then that we have now. That's probably why I don't use a lot of it, because I'm used to using a compass or something to see if there's magnetic problems, or the people use the talking boards and all that. Now we have SB7 spirit boxes, which is still a talking board. It's just you're still asking questions to get response. You still have to ground yourself properly. There's a lot of things that remain, but again, it's the same thing. We're at that moment. Years ago, doctors used to think bloodletting would cure everybody, and now we laugh about it. So we've learned a lot over the last, I've been in it for 40 years. Things are much different. There's a lot more uh, things that help, but there's a lot of old school stuff that's even better. I'd rather use a Polaroid camera to try and get spirit on, as opposed to a digital camera, because not everybody could afford those high-end digital cameras, because most of the time you take a digital camera picture with your phone, if there's spots missing, the program fills it in, and sometimes it could show looking like a spirit's there when it's just a digital, fix. But that's why you're not going to get that on a Polaroid camera. So it's still good to use older devices, even digital recordings. That'll fill in pixel type of information or sound information also. But sometimes using that reel to reel or the tape or any of those types of things could be a better thing. So, using some of the old school stuff with the knowledge that we have now that has changed over the years, and still looking at it. I know it's still always going to be a pseudoscience because it's impossible to repeat the same thing over and over and over again in the paranormal. The guy's not going to always say hi every time you ask to be able to measure that. It's unfortunate, but we could attempt to. There's nothing wrong with attempting to try and get some stuff to repeat. There are moments in time that I've heard about investigators find that somebody was shot at a house on July 2nd. And every July 2nd for the last 10 years, the sound of that gunshot goes off. That's something that potentially could be measurable, but a lot of times you're not going to get that. And that's what makes this industry so great. Because again, you're never 100% right or wrong about it. The theories are what we chase. It's the same thing. I'm a true crime guy. I study serial killers. There's a pattern, but nobody knows what the fingerprint is. We don't know why they did what they did. We could interview them, but still, that was them. You can't pinpoint it 100%. And that's why so many people like true crime. That's why so many people like the paranormal. It's the unknown. It's the thing that goes bump in the night that gives you that adrenaline rush of, oh, what am I going to figure out now? It's like it's not a definitive answer, and we chase it, and that chase is the best part of it. So, and getting together with people like yourself and talking about this stuff makes it, even better. Coming to places like Paracon, of course, got to plug it, July 12th and 13th, and come and talk to us and get those stories. We'll tell your stories. I got the guest speakers that tell their most profound stories, and and it helps you that are getting into the field or interested in the field to be able to expound on your experience and be able to go forward on your own journey to learn and make those mistakes and learn from them.
So yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with all that. I'm actually in the process of writing my first book to help guide people in the field. Yeah, so hopefully it's not as boring as most of them are. So Wade Kirby,
Yeah.
he made a point. He's a good friend. He made a point when he was on my show last year.
Yep.
He made the point that in the field, continuous education is the key. And I told him I agree with that. And the way I like to say it, in the paranormal field, you're either green and growing or you're ripe and rotting. So yeah. I always want to be growing. So
yeah.
So to me, I tell people that back 35, 40 years ago when we got in the field, like you said, we were actually all about helping each other. We were about talking and making the field a better place. Nowadays, unfortunately, we have some of the people who think they're celebrities, and luckily, we're going a little bit away from that now. We're going more towards the real. For instance, and I'm not going to mention the name because I'm just not. But when I was down at Smoky Mountain Terror, we had this team there who's not even that popular. I mean, they may be like a Facebook, they may be like a YouTube popular, but they're not like. And they were charging $60 for a poster.
If you come see me and all that, and you have I'll sign it for free. I don't mind. I've been in books. Some of my stories have been in books that authors have taken. I've actually, there's a couple books coming out that wrote the foreword for. Am I a writer? It's just my love for the people that wrote the book and our time together and the knowledge of the topic. But I'd like to write my own book one day. But the thing is to charge like that, But even then, has somebody running an event, and I don't want anybody to take offense to us. I know everybody's trying to earn money and things like that, but as an event coordinator, when you're taking people in and all that, and how you look at it, a lot of these people, unfortunately think they're famous. All right. But my thing, the way I look at it is, okay, I'm selling tickets. I have to at least break even to pay for advertising or what I got to pay you to be there or anything like that. If you don't sell enough tickets because of your presence or to help me advertise for you, it's not worth that money, because if I give all these people money and they don't, their free table, their way of coming and earning money. Yeah, I'm the showrunner. I got to advertise to get people to buy tickets. But if you're going to be there, why aren't you telling your fans that you're going to be there?
Exactly.
Don't put it all on me because I don't have the same fans as you do. If you create that
Exactly.
network and all that, that's what's going to bring back, more people coming to these Paracons that have died off. It's not about, it's got to be about the Paracon, the group, and just being honored to be there amongst everybody else and just help each other. Like I said, the old days, we'd sit around the table and just talk and exchange ideas and love each other enough to push each other to be better.
Exactly.
We want the Paracon to be awesome. So I need the help of all the people that are coming, vendors, special guests, and to push it. And that way their fans will come and they'll be able to, sell their wares, whether it be a $60 pitcher, but I hope nobody does that. But either way, get your books out, get your information out, do your readings, psychic readings, and the more people that come and get to know you, those psychics end up getting more business afterwards. So it's like throwing a pebble in the calm waters. You want to create the ripple, and the best way to do that is the most people throwing those rocks to create that ripple. And that's what we have to do for each other in this industry. So that's what's lacking. Too many people have ego and they just only want to think about themselves. But again, remember, this industry is about helping the living and the dead. All this other stuff is gravy. But remember, ego will keep you so far away from spirit. You lose respect when you don't, push that type of message forward. So.
Exactly. I mean, most of my events, a charity event, as you know. So,
Mhm.
but all my people have always made their money by selling their books, selling.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'll be honest between me and you, and I guess my viewers. There's a few people I've paid. I mean, you can't not. I mean, uh, um, but you know. But yeah, they have to advertise. They have to help me advertise.
Yeah,
Like I
are they gonna bring in enough revenue or donations to
exactly,
take part of what you paid them? People
exactly.
demand
Yeah,
a lot of money. I'm like, we've been doing these Paracons for years. Some people demand as much as it takes to run the thing. It's like, I'm going to give you
yeah,
all the money I need to run this thing, and that means I'll be negative of what I paid you. So, and then that's why a lot of these Paracons fail. You have to be careful, and people have to understand and be respectful of each other. Again, these Paracons are, vendors for them to be able to get their message out for people that come and honored to be there to get their message out. And then people come to their tables and they're able to show what they're all about in their book, who they are, whatever, type of information they give out, signing autographs, things like that. They make that all back. So it really covers everything, and that's the way we have to look at it. We got to help each other. And if we keep not working together, then it's all going to go by the wayside. And then they're not going to have any more events like that because people can't afford to run these events without help from everybody that is invited or part of it. So it's a team
exactly.
effort.
That's like me. You know, I've started speaking again, as we know. We talked about that last year, and I don't. If somebody wants to throw me a hotel room in,
Yeah,
I'm okay with it.
that's
I'm okay with
perfectly
that.
fine sometimes, and again, it's a matter. You as a business person, you still have to be able to justify. There's nothing against. I love all the guests, all the vendors, and all that. But really, I look in the mirror and I'm like, if I went to an event, am I worth the amount they're going to pay me? Am I going to help them make enough? Is my persona enough to get them more tickets than what they would if I wasn't there? That's you got to look hard in the mirror. You know, whether you've been on TV or whatever, anything, it doesn't matter. Is like, are you going to be able to do that? But what you have to do as an individual, if you think you're that popular, then you better advertise yourself and let people know where you're going to be to earn back and be respectful of the showrunners or anything like that that have put out their risk to help you get your message out. So, yep.
Well, I definitely don't think I'm that popular. Uh,
No, I definitely
uh,
don't either, but that's okay. So
uh,
I don't mind a hotel room or an Airbnb. Those are always good, but you know, a
yeah,
free table is like,
I,
man, if I could sell stuff at somewhere, I got some cool stuff. I have the koozies that say, I love ghost hunting in the F word. So, but I don't want to, I don't know what you could say on your show, but
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I have a little stuff. That's what I do.
You know, and I got
I,
my down the rabbit hole cups, and you know, it's fun. But people come to the table and they ask me questions and they show me stuff, and I love talking to the people, the patrons that come in, or just going around and seeing some old friends and making some new friends in the industry, like you said, networking and you know, just getting the message out. Especially for myself, you know, a lot of the events I go to, it's like talking about, you know, the shaman and the showman, but most importantly, my, you know, my main business to help heal is Wardruna. And I just want to get that message out and how we're different. And we have a lot of stuff going on with that because in July, Haunted Hillview Manor out there in that Pennsylvania area, Newcastle, Wardruna will be unveiled on the Spirit Realm Network and doing a live as they do the event. So the event is geared off of what Wardruna does, and you'll get to meet a lot of the people. Unfortunately, my business partner will be out there with a lot of the people from our crew. I can't make it, so I might be on like we are right now. I might be on the live like the weather reporter in some other area and just say, hey, how's it going? You know, which should be good. But yeah, I want everybody to be able to see that too. But again, you know, July 12th and 13th for Paracon. And, you know, the month after that in August, early August, the first weekend of August, we'll have the Witch Festival again in Connecticut. We have some psychic fairs in between too. We have our summer psychic fair up at Dudleytown Brewery in Windsor, Connecticut. That's always a big one. So it's fun. We like to do our psychic fairs at breweries. So when people get up some liquid courage to go find out if their father or mother is still around, is always kind of fun to watch. So and profound on the same point of it. So
so we actually got a question we're going to go to in just a second, but I did want to talk a little bit more. So because you like you said you broke up fast. So September 2026, if you can make it down here, we'll work out something. I'll throw you a table.
yeah,
I'll get you a hotel.
yeah,
We can talk about everything else if we need to. But I
yeah.
really would love to have both of you or just you, either one. Both of you would be great.
Good.
But we'll talk about that off the screen though. How's that?
Yeah.
We got a
Very
question.
good.
We got a question for Damien. Damien asked, "Have you ever been to a location for an investigation, and it took a turn, and you solved a crime or came across a cold case?"
There's been times where human bones have been discovered where law enforcement had to come in and you have to shut the whole investigation down. Over the years, that's happened, whether it solved a crime or not. There's been speculation of stuff. I had a case where the history was that a man bludgeoned his wife to death in front of his 6 children because she was cheating on him with a boarder up in tobacco fields and all that. Um, you know, but there was speculation as a psychic medium in feeling the energy that this guy, I think, because of his violent nature, might have killed a lot of the boarders because of what they might have been doing and buried them in this yard or on this field is what we were kind of picking up on. I really wanted to do ground penetrating radar to see if we were right. We never got the permission or the opportunity to do that. So that still stays open. And that was a very profound case that I did. Don't want to get into too much because it was a home case, but there is the ability that it might become a book. that I'll be writing and all that. But there's a lot of topics I want to write about. But I think out of 40 years, that case had so many layers to the onion that it's a case study on top of it, and how we approached it and how we were able to come to the conclusion and how we were able to help the family sleep after 2 years. So I think that's important for people in the paranormal to see the thought that went into it, the research that went into it, helping this case for over a year to come to that conclusion. Um, it's almost like, okay, this is how we did it. This is why we did this. This is why we did that. This is what we got from it. So I think it's important. And I know the people that lived in that house don't live there anymore. But I'll never use real names because of the protection, or the home. And I do still have a little bit of fear of writing it, because there was something malevolent in that house that I don't want to give power to anymore. But it is one of those books I've been trying to figure out how I'm going to approach it in a proper way where I don't cause an issue with spirit. So
I yeah, I understand.
mhm.
So we had an hour and a half, actually over an hour and a half.
Yeah,
So
it's fun.
which is good. Sometimes I go
Yeah,
longer.
yeah,
So I appreciate you coming back on, Tom. I
yeah,
got lots of stuff I could talk to you about.
yeah.
We'll just have to have you back on again. How's that sound?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I love talking to you, and I'm glad we're not going any longer, because usually it's like I've had conversations with my friend. I don't know if anybody knows John Tenney out of up in that Detroit area and all. I've had conversations with him until like 5 in the morning. Us drinking. He likes his vodka. I drink my bourbon, and everybody's like goes to sleep, and we're still up talking by a fireplace up in the mountains of New Hampshire. And that's the thing I love. I love the industry. I love the people I meet, and just exchanging ideas and complete weirdness and whatever else you could muster out there and get your theories out there. And so that's why I want everybody to come to Paracon, so you could talk to the guests, go to their tables, and have that exchange. So,
All right. So everybody sees the address underneath Tom's name.
yeah,
Uh, we'll see. Thank you for being on the show, and we will
yeah.
see you everybody next week.